So I'm here at the Native Treasure Show 2010 in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I'm here with Sheridan McKnight and Dolores Purdy Corcoran, who are both ledger artists, female ledger artists. I recently did a piece from the Heard Show on my blog about ledger artists, and was not aware that there were even female ledger artists. So these two ladies were hitting me up saying, "Hey, when are you going to feature the chicks?" So here they are, ta-da!
Yes.
In all their feminine glory.
My name is Sheridan McKnight, and I'm Chippewa and Lakota. Cass Lake, Minnesota is where the Chippewa are, and they were actually very supportive in my education, my art career. And the Lakota is where I get a lot of my inspiration. A lot of my regalia in my artwork is usually from my Lakota side, and it's really, basically, it's the two tribes that influence me very much so.
Well, I am Caddo, which is from the southeast, and I'm also part Winnebago, which also is from Minnesota. And my main interest, where I started falling into this, was looking at the old ledgers that came out of Fort Marion, Florida, because of the old people, the old warriors that were arrested in Oklahoma and sent to Fort Marion, Florida. So that's where my interest arose, because at that point I started looking at some of these books and realizing how sophisticated some of this work was coming out of the prisons. So that's when then I went back to see if I was related to any of these people, or how I could also combine with this ledger art. So that's where my influence came. Well, the history of my ledger art that I'm doing actually is more the prison art. So I do things that were depicted from Fort Marion, Florida. They were there. There was a group of 72 men that were arrested in 1875. They were all from Oklahoma. Some of them were Caddos, and they were sent to Fort Marion, Florida. And during those 3 years, they had them start drawing scenes depicting pre-reservation period. After that, they started the Carlisle Indian School, and I had a lot of different relatives. I probably had about 15 or 20 different relatives that attended Carlisle, then Riverside, and all sorts of other different schools, like that Indian school. So, that was my influence, and I'm sure, was it a helpful influence for you?
It was as well, and there's a tragedy behind ledger art. It wasn't something. I think they wanted to depict these stories because they were heartbroken. They weren't in their land anymore. They were arrested. They were patriots and chiefs and strong-willed men that were imprisoned to keep them. They wanted to keep them there, and I think what they wanted. Whoever that man was that gave them that first ledger book, I think out of empathy, they felt bad for them, and they would write, they would draw their stories of their hunts and their families,
and then the cool part was that as soon as they realized it became such a tourist attraction, then they allowed them to start selling that, and so that's where I think a lot of the stuff that they're going, what? And they were actually able to start making some money so they could send back to their families. They were doing it then. There was definitely women ledger artists at the time, not only necessarily just on ledger paper, but also on winter counts. In some tribes, women were doing more winter counts, and even the beadwork.
Can you explain what that is?
Winter counts, it would be an old skin, deer, buffalo, something like that, and each year would be something important. If they remembered that the frost came and killed all the apple bugs, that would be the year you would find branches that were bare. And so they knew how this winter camp worked. But women were also actively involved. They just were not known to do that quite so much.
So fortunately, in this contemporary world, we're getting a little attention. Thankfully,
Excellent.
Yes.
To you. My style, actually, like I say, is really dealing more with the prison art and what they came out of Fort Marion, Florida, and the humor, very subtle humor and not so subtle humor. So I use lots of polka dots. I use old pickup trucks because my father always had an old pickup truck, and it was all different colors of pickup trucks. So I like to use the pickup trucks, but I like to use lots of humor. Something you have to read into it. Every single one of mine has a polka dot somewhere because there was no weaving of polka dots. Nobody even weaved polka dots. I mean, polka dots was not even close to anything that was done by any of the older people in the 1880s, So I've started doing that, but I like to incorporate humor more so I think that a lot of other ledger artists, both male and female, do. And that's kind of my style.
And I think, yeah, the big differences are that mine have a tendency to be very serious and solemn, peaceful. I've heard people describe it.
Very peaceful.
I decided to tell stories from a woman's perspective only on a personal level. And I have children. I have 2 daughters. I have a lot of tendencies. I pray. I have a lot of things that I do all these things, and they do incorporate into my art. Sometimes I'll do paintings not really knowing really what I'm doing, and then I'll look back and go, wait, that was that's sort of my life the past 6 months or a year ago. So there's a lot of that, or I'll just, yeah, that's really what it is. It's more of a very personal level. It's, and you know, I mean, I would love to be funny. I mean, I'd love to get that going. But you know, and as far as our relationship, I try not to look at her work because I don't want to be. It's her style. You know, it's very difficult with the ledger artists here. We got to kind of keep our own. I think that's how it is in creativity anyway. But I appreciate what you have, and I don't want to put a truck in as much as I would love to. Well, I've noticed lately. I've noticed that some of our other artists, ledger artists, have taken on a little bit of a woman's perspective, maybe a feminine side, which I love because they're beautiful. Dahlin is doing women with regalia and flowers. What's another example?
Well, I've also noticed that like Michael Horst is doing more humor than he used to do. He used to be a little bit more, the arrows and the blood spurting out of the mouth, and he's kind of getting into the humor. So I think as women ledger artists, we're influencing men too. I believe that. Well, men, the majority of the men who are ledger artists, I do feel respect what we are doing. They understand what we're doing. They understand we're coming from a different look and a different perspective. I can't say all of them are, but it's like that in every field, whether you're a beater, whether you're a potter, whether you're a painter, there's certain people who will find fault.
Michael Horst has really been a mentor to me all these years. He really has. If I was to choose one, he's the one. I think just because of his energy and his acceptance of me, and he's given me some amazing documents. He gave me a document that's a hymnal, which is sort of appropriate for my subject matter, in the Lakota language. So and Dahlin has given me some beautiful pieces. So I mean, out of their gifts, I believe that's their way of showing respect. You know, and I believe they are all right with it.
Yeah, you know, I feel that when we watch theirs change with the feminine perspective and with the humor perspective, I think we're kind of getting it.
Yeah, and the colors again, a lot of pinks and oranges, and very feminine. And I think it's a good decision on their part. I really do.
Yeah, and you're right. You're right about the pinks and the oranges and the light blues and pastels.
Do you think that that's a conscious thing, or I mean, how do they when you interact with them? How do they treat you, and do you feel that they respect what you do?
Yes.
That is the biggest challenge, because I know there are a lot of us, and we have to keep this fresh, right? I think I'm just going to continue doing what I do, and I think my subject matters probably will change, like I mentioned earlier, with my life experiences. Things are, they'll be different. I believe the future is. I know there's a lot of younger women that have come along. Avis Charlie is with us now. She's doing her own thing, and I believe that there's definitely a future for it, and there's definitely an interest, and people always, 10 years now I've been doing this, but they always want to know about it, and a lot of people don't know about how ledger art began. So I think that's something to keep educating people about.